Welcome, everybody. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the magnificent, epic, truly epic novel, The Grass Crown by Colleen McCullough. Man, that's a tongue twister. Say that. The Grass Crown by Colleen McCullough. Grass Crown by Colleen McCullough. Actually, it's not that bad, but it's actually not a tongue twister. I just made it up in the very beginning. Tried to convince you all that it was a tongue twister, and then convinced myself that it wasn't a tongue twister. Anyway, this book came out in 1991. If you want to see my review of book number 1 in the Masters of Rome series, yeah, this is book number 2 in the Masters of Rome series. If you want to see my review of book number 1 in the Masters of Rome series, just type in my name, Brian Lee Durfee, and The First Man in Rome, and the review will show up on your YouTube channel. I may or may not link to it. I often forget to link to things. You might have to do the heavy lifting yourself, people. What is this book about? The Grass Crown came out in 1991, book number 2. You know, we always review the covers first. So, oh, by the way, if you saw my review of The First Man in Rome, you realize how jazzed I was about that book, the first book in the series. There's 7 books in the series, and they are all huge, and it's just a chronicling of Caesar and his entire life, of Julius Caesar, from when he was a baby up until when he dies, right? And so, and every single book is humongous and filled and packed with detail. And just go watch my review of First Man in Rome. I love this. I was so psyched to discover this series and to get involved. And I liked it so much that I went and bought all of the books in hardcover and all of the books in paperback. And so let's check out the covers, right? So for The Grass Crown, this is the original hardcover version. It's just kind of plain with a crown. It's not even a grass crown. It's like a weed. It's like a thorn bush. It's like somebody gathered up a bunch of thistles and mulch off the ground. I mean, it doesn't look appealing at all. This cover, however, I like this cover. I like the paperback versions. The wraparound cover of, we got Julius Caesar and the young Julius right there. And we've got the grass crown, on Sulla. Or maybe it's Gaius Marius. I can't remember. But it's a great, great painting by one Tom Hall. And then the illustrations. We've got a lot of illustrations in these books, which is fantastic. And these illustrations of all the characters get an illustration, and these illustrations are actually taken from the actual time. These were actual drawings done at the time of Julius Caesar. So these are as accurate a representations as you're going to get. They're from the next best thing to the digital photography, or deep fake, or whatever. But so we get the original characters in their original drawings, the original portraits they sat for 2,000 years ago. Not only that, but we get a grip of maps. Maps all over the place, so we know where we're at in all of these battles that take place across Europe, and all the battles that Caesar and all of his dudes fight. And we get a 100-page glossary. At the end, we get a 100-page glossary of all the terms, the Roman terms, and everything. So it's a very immersive experience to read these books. What is The Grass Crown about? Well, the first book, The First Man in Rome, was set about the time Julius Caesar was born, and it focused on the 2 main characters, Gaius Marius and Lucius Sulla. Now, these 2 were great friends in The First Man in Rome. Now they're bitter enemies in The Grass Crown. So, their trust has been broken. They went from being the most trusted of men to now they don't like each other at all and are just conspiring and scheming to just undo the other one at every turn. They're enemies and rivals, folks. And then Caesar, now in this book, he's no longer a baby. He is actually a 10-year-old boy. So this follows Caesar, young Caesar, from when he's about a 10-year-old boy to a 13-year-old boy. And I got to tell you, man, I love it. I love it. Every time Caesar shows up, he steals every scene he's in. Because he's just wicked smart. He's like Joffrey Baratheon. He's just you kind of get the feeling that he's just not quite right in the head. And he's got a real sinister side. Maybe not quite as dark as Joffrey Baratheon. But man, he's people are wary of him already. They're like, this 10-year-old kid, watch out for him, That's kind of the way it is. And but he comes under the tutelage of Gaius Marius. So Sulla and Gaius Marius are rivals. Well, Caesar comes under the tutelage of Gaius Marius. Gaius Marius is kind of getting older. He's kind of infirmed. Caesar sort of becomes his ADA helper, if you know what ADA. People, it's kind of like in nowadays when people have physical handicaps and they hire a helper to help them. That's kind of what Caesar becomes to Gaius Marius. He sort of becomes his helper. Now, he's busy helping Gaius Marius all the time, and when really he'd rather just be out playing with his friends or going to battle school like all of his friends. But Gaius Marius says, no, you're going to be under my tutelage, and I'm going to teach you the arts of diplomacy and things like that. And so, but Caesar, the young Caesar, he already knows that. He's already wicked smart. He's already wicked smart. He doesn't need that. I can already outthink all the adults in the room. So he's like, I don't need that. I want to go learn how to fight because I'm going to need to know how to fight. And they kind of deem him. What they do is they sort of like give him this position in society where he's not allowed to fight. And they want to marry him off real early and have him just be a diplomat because they can see he's wicked smart and they can see he can out debate just even the grown-ups in the room. And so they're just like, no, we're going to be a diplomat. And they sort of arrange a marriage for him that makes it so he'll never be a general in the army. And anyway, but he doesn't like this. Little young Caesar doesn't like this. And he becomes sort of like this Joffrey Baratheon kind of like little bastard, And on top of that, that's one side of the story. This book has so many characters. This book is setting up all of the villains and heroes for the entire Julius Caesar story. And so we're meeting them all when they're young kids. Like we meet Pompey and Cicero when they're young. We meet a young Brutus. We meet everybody that's going to be around Caesar as he grows up. And let me tell you, Pompey, Pompey is just, kind of like Caesar is sort of like a young Ender Wiggin, just like really smarter than everybody else. Pompey is the opposite. I mean, they actually let him go to war, and he can't fight for crap. So he's like the most inept battle person of all, and he's sort of like a daddy's boy, and he's just screwing up left and right. But then he comes in contact with Cicero, and they become friends, and Cicero is a much more competent dude, right? And so Cicero and Pompey sort of take each other, and now they're sort of like teamed up as these players in the whole plot, right? And it's just like I love it because it's like a coming of age tale for a lot of different characters. Caesar, Pompey, Cicero, all the other characters. This is really a coming of age tale for all of those people as they're all being led and sort of puppet. They're like the little puppets in the Gaius Mariuses and the Lucius Sullases of Rome are sort of the puppet masters, sort of guiding Cicero, Pompey, Caesar, and all these different young characters into the different spots that they want them to fill, right? And Caesar he sees through it all, right? Caesar sees through it all. He just wants to be in battle school with everybody else. He wants to go fight with everybody else. And he does creepy shit. He does creepy stuff. I mean, there is one scene where he pushes his friend off a cliff in front of everybody. He does it in front of everybody, and yet he does it in such a way that it makes him look like the hero. Like my buddy was being stupid and I was trying to save him. But clearly he pushed him off, horse and all. Actually, there's 2 horses and 2 kids involved. 2 horses and 1 kid go over the cliff, and Caesar does not go over the cliff, but he makes it like he's the hero, like he tried to save the day. I mean, he's that clever, right? Now, I don't know how much of that scene is accurate historically, because I do know that Colleen McCullough researched the hell out of these. Because I bought a book called Rubicon, which is a history of all of this, like a real history book of all of this. And I've been following along in Rubicon to what she's writing. And so far, she's been accurate on huge, big main events. It's some of those little smaller scenes where I'm is she making that up? Did Caesar really toss his friend over a cliff. You know what I mean? Did Caesar really ride his horse and another guy's horse over a cliff? I don't know. I don't know about that kind of thing. But this book is bloody brilliant in a lot of ways because it just shows you the day in, day out, gritty Roman Empire and how it was to just live back then and how they just didn't treat their enemies. Like, they've got Mithridates, like one of the main bad guys. I don't even know if he's a bad guy. He's just the leader of the army that's trying to attack Rome. And his name's Mithridates or something like that. I can't remember. But there's a lot of stuff with him in there too. And and just to see how the different armies treat their captives, how the different rivals in Rome treat the people that when they finally get a one-up on a guy, they don't let him, they kill him. And there's a scene in there where, I mean, it's so gory. It's one of the most gory scenes I've read in any book, but I love gory stuff. But it's where one man alone, one guy, as part of his punishment, he's tasked to chop the head off of 5,000 of his friends and soldiers. So he has to chop the head off of 5,000 people. And he has to do it one after the next right in front of him. And Cicero and Pompey are forced to watch this. And this guy, he chops off, he beheads 5,000 people in a day. And the bodies are piling up and the heads are piling up. And Cicero and Pompey are watching this. And Pompey is just a little bit like, I don't know if I'm really into it. I don't really if I'm down for this. This ain't my thing. I don't like movies, this gory kind of. He's like, I'm not into the rated R movie kind of a thing. This is like making me sick to my stomach. And Cicero is like digging it. He's glorying in it. He's just like, you can see the wheels in his head are like, damn, man, when I become a ruler, this is the kind of thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make dudes chop off the heads of like 5,000 people. Just like one dude has to do the whole thing. One dude has to do all the work. And it's just like a very intense, bizarre, gut churning, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm reading this type scene, right? The book is full of it. The First Man in Rome, book 1, was full of it. This book is even more full. This book is way more action, way more battle scenes, way more political intrigue, way more interesting. The characters are getting so much more interesting to follow now. And it's not just the men. There's a ton of female characters in here too. Like we meet Servilia, and we meet Julia. I mean, we met Julia and Julia Lala and Julia number 2 and all of the Julias. But I mean, it's just so much going on in this series that it's like, it reminds me of the first time I read Game of Thrones, and I was so immersed in just the political intrigue and how many characters were just dripping with such personality, such divergent personalities too. And this is the way it is. I mean, if you've ever watched HBO's Rome series, that series gives you a taste of what you can expect here. And that's high praise. Every one of these books. So far, book 1, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I'm giving this like an even more enthusiastic 10 out of 10. And I can't wait to get to book 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because they're all this big and they're all about these characters. Fucking awesome! 10 out of 10.